Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Children's Assessment Center. My name is Elaine Stolte, and I am the director here. I'd like to thank you for joining us this morning on a very important issue. We are so proud to partner with one of the largest ICAC teams in the United States, the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. Along with our other 56 partner agencies, we continue to see an increase in children being lured off the internet. In order for us to prevent this from happening, we all must make sure that children never meet up with someone they have met on the internet. Sex offenders exploit the anonymous aspect of the internet to gain access of our children and never reveal their true intentions or their age. They are invisible predators, lurking behind all of our electronic devices, our iPhones, our phones, our computers. They are lurking behind each and every one of these. In our therapy sessions with our children, we have learned that after being lured off the internet, teens many times blame themselves because they were the one who chose to meet the individual that they met on the internet. And they feel that it is their fault. And parents sometimes are prone to inappropriately blame their children because of their limited understanding of the internet and social media. Training and education are key. We are so grateful to work with the ICAC team here at the Children's Assessment Center. They are doing amazing work at preventing these crimes from occurring. Many times, our ICAC team will prevent an act from happening. They will rescue a child before they were abducted, or they will rescue a child before the sexual act has occurred. Therefore, we applaud them for their incredible work and their dedication to protecting our children in Harris County. This morning, we're very fortunate to be joined by many law enforcement jurisdictions who work with the ICAC team hand in hand. After I'm done making a few welcoming remarks, we will hear from Sergeant Menendez, who's our Houston Police Department ICAC commander. We will then hear from the District Attorney, Brett Ligon, in Montgomery County. We will hear from the Montgomery County Precinct 2 Constable, Gene DeForest, Harris County Sheriff's Office, Captain Gary Spruger, our Fort Bend District Attorney, Brian Middleton, our Constable Alan Rosen from Precinct 1, and then Carrie McCracken from the Children's Assessment Center will close regarding some training aspects on protecting your children from the internet. So please join me in welcoming Sergeant Menendez.
Thank you, Elaine. She usually promotes me when she introduces me. I was getting used to that, Elaine. So good morning, everybody. I'm Sergeant Menendez. I'm a sergeant with the Houston Police Department, Special Victims Division. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out, especially all the agency heads who understand how important it is to combat child exploitation and basically any crime to do against children, because they're our most vulnerable population. Special thanks to Chief Dobbins, Commander Angelo, who are my direct command staff, and Lieutenant Colburn. Chief Acevedo couldn't be here, he is out of town. If you don't know what the Houston Metro ICAC consists of, it's 68 affiliate agencies from all the 8 counties surrounding Harris, which include Liberty, Brazoria, Fort Bend, Galveston, Montgomery, Waller, and Chambers. So I do a lot of driving around, but it's all worth it, right? So real quick, I'll be very brief and just inform you that we will not discuss investigative techniques which were used to apprehend these individuals. A lot of these arrests were conducted in undercover capacity, so providing those details would hurt our future efforts. Also, please remember that some of these cases involve juvenile victims, and all efforts need to be made to keep their information private. So this operation was completed during the months of April and May. It's called Operation Broken Heart. And sadly, you know, we like to make a lot of arrests, but sadly we would hope that the arrests would drop, because that would mean that, you know, there's just less predators out there. We did the same operation last year for 3 months and made 60 arrests. And this year we only did it for 2 months and made 51 arrests in that 2-month period. So it's not stopping. As far, I guess the internet's not going away, right? Hopefully we were thinking that it was gonna go away for a little bit there. So we need to be vigilant, parents need to be vigilant, because that's the front line. We need to make sure that we're watching what our kids are doing online. Some of the more notable cases, and it just kind of pinpoints of how large the magnitude is of this crime. A suspect traveled all the way from California here to Houston, where he met his victim and sexually assaulted her. This is not a local crime. This is not something that's just relegated to your next door neighbor or to one town away. This is a nationwide issue. And that's why the task force program is so important, because I, as the task force commander for Houston, can contact Seattle, can contact New York, can contact anyone, and they are always answering the phone, and they'll jump on that person and go get them for us, or find a victim that needs to be found. In the same effect, we're also on call 24 hours, so when someone needs our help, they usually call me at 2 in the morning. I don't know why it's always at 2 in the morning, but it usually is, or if it's not 2 in the morning, it's Friday at around 4:35-ish as I'm driving home, right? So, but it's all worth it. You have to be dedicated to do this type of work, and so as long as we're saving children's lives, then wake me up at 2 all you want, right? One of the other cases we had, and it already made the news, and it made the news without even us announcing it, just because he was a Houston firefighter. Those are kind of difficult for us, just because you don't ever want to arrest a public servant, but it also lets you know that if you're hurting children, or you're downloading child pornography, or you're doing any of the crimes that involve children, there is no mercy. We are coming, and we are going to be charging you. We also found a suspect who was sexually abusing 2 small children. Those are the most difficult, because obviously there's live victims there, and that's our goal, is to find those live victims. During the 2 months, we rescued a total of 5 children. As you can imagine, being a child in that horrifying situation where you're being sexually abused every day, I could not imagine anything worse, and those 5 children were proactively sought and found. I'd like to give special recognition to Montgomery County, especially Precinct 1, who had 10 arrests during the operation, and Precinct 2, who had 5 arrests. That's just amazing work. That's just predators that are not on the street able to hurt our kids. And on that note, I ask you to keep our investigators and detectives in your thoughts always, as they deal with some of the most heinous crimes imaginable and have to view these videos and images on a daily basis. They're an elite and special group of investigators who choose to investigate these crimes. Just realize that each video or image is a child that has been, will be, or is currently being brutalized. This crime never ends for them, as every time an image or video is shared, the child is re-victimized. So apart from the 51 arrests, the operation was a tremendous success. We had over 148 investigations, 511 cyber tips received, identified 5 child victims, sent over 389 subpoenas, served 88 search warrants, examined 26,043 gigabytes of data, and reached 11,899 people in our presentations. We partner with the Crime Stoppers and Texas Center for the Missing to kind of handle a lot of our presentations. I do all of them. Recently we did our first Spanish presentation, so if you need us to come speak, I'll speak to who will ever listen, anytime, any day. So in closing, I'd like to remind the parents that they cannot turn a blind eye to the activities of the children online, whether it's a cell phone, tablet, or gaming device. Make sure as a parent you are watching closely. Those devices have access to the world, and predators know where your children go and meet them there. You wouldn't leave your kid alone at the park, but yet we give them access to a cell phone that has access to the entire world. So as a parent, you have to make note of that and make sure you're keeping a watchful eye. So at this point, I would like to introduce the Montgomery County DA, Brett Ligon, whose office was responsible for the filing of charges on 25 of the 51 suspects arrested during the operation.
25 of the 51, right? Montgomery County is a county that's 1/10 the size of Harris County. We have 600,000 people in Montgomery County, 600,000 residents, and every single one of them means something to Montgomery County. There's 6 million residents in Harris County alone, and yet our numbers are half of the filings consistently. Now, why is that? Because when we talk about prioritizing children, and you talk about where you want to spend your money and how you're going to prioritize it, number one, Montgomery County does. I'd like to thank all 5 of our constables. Every single constable are so involved with a proactive effort, right? Because our efforts in internet crimes against children, it has to be a proactive effort. You're not waiting until the crime has occurred. You're actively looking for people who are exchanging child pornography or are actively looking to engage in sexual activity with a child in Montgomery County. The 5 constables, Conroe Police Department, HSI, Tomball PD, those agencies, Jerry Surratt, Pam Minshew, these individual people every day get up to make a difference. But where is the failing? Because everybody has to take responsibility. It's not on the law enforcement side. Prosecutors across the state and the courts within the states have also got to get serious. Here's the brutal reality. You cannot fix a pedophile. You cannot divert a pedophile. You cannot give probation to a pedophile because a pedophile cannot be fixed. A pedophile cannot be rehabilitated. So when the focus becomes on the defendant to rehabilitate him as opposed to who the victim is and who the next victim is, pedophilia is the one type of crime that actually creates another demon, another monster. Because so many of our children that have been victims of sexual assault go on to commit crimes of sexual assault. So if we're trying to break the causal connection, right, in your community, you have to do it at the CP level. You have to do it at the ICAC level. Long before these people get into being touch offenders, it's the fantasy and the ideation. And so when you stop it at that connection and you demand as a prosecutor pen time only, there are no pleas in Montgomery County that result in anything less than pen time for a pedophile. Montgomery County juries are serious about protecting Montgomery County residents, and the state of Texas is serious about it. Thank you.
I want to say something on behalf of Brett Ligon. It was because of him that each of the 5 constables in Montgomery County have ICAT detectives. It was because of him, Brett Ligon, that went to the county commissioners and the county judge and said, hey, this is what we have to have. And it was because of him, each one of us constables in Montgomery County have what we have today. And I thank you for that, Brett. Now, I'll go back to when I first started in law enforcement a couple of years ago. Back in 1973, I went to the academy, and while in the academy, we had a FBI agent that came in to teach us sex crimes. Well, I didn't think too much about it at the time, sex crimes. I figured adults, doing stuff. And he says, during the class, he says, I'm going to put some pictures up, and I want you to look at these pictures. And then I'm going to ask you a question at the end. I want you to tell me that these kids are having a good time. And I was thinking, kids? I'm going, what? So he put pictures up, 10 to 15 of them. Young kids, 6, 7, 8 years old. And at the end, he said, now tell me that those kids are having a good time. And I remember those pictures. And I remember the horrified look on their faces of each one of them children. In my mind today. And I look at what we have today, when we didn't have the things back then that we have today, the internet, the cell phones, we didn't have any of that. But today, we have all of that. And we have the ability, thanks to people like you that are working the ICAT teams, to be able to get involved with these people and get them off the street. I'm very proud of Montgomery County. I'm very proud of my ICAT detectives. They do a great job. Montgomery County does a great job with child predators. And I know I talked with my captain on the way down here, and it reminded me of a woman, Because I asked him, I said, is there women involved in this also? And he says, yeah. He said, don't you remember the woman that brought her 2-year-old child to Montgomery County to have sex with a man? 2 years old. Thanks to Brett Ligon, she's in prison right now. And I think she got 3 45-year terms, right? 3 45-year terms, and hopefully she'll never see that child again. That's number one. Number two, that child was given to the grandparents and eventually taken away from the grandparents, and now is in foster care. Thank God and thank you, my ICAT detective, for doing that, which was my captain, Greg Thomason, did a fantastic job on that case to get that woman and get her off the street. Like I say, I can't thank the ICAT team. You're the people, you're the detectives, you're the ones that are doing the job that does what needs to be done, and I thank each and every one of you for that. God bless you.
Elaine, I want to start by saying what a great job. We're all out of whack here. I'm Constable Alan Rosen, Harris County Precinct 1. Thank you for the CAC and all the work that you guys do here. Y'all are always a partner for all the law enforcement, and I want to acknowledge that first. I want to put a face on the perpetrators that sometimes make these cases. One of our cases in this operation was Christopher Lackner. Why do I bring him up? Because our investigators said this guy was one of the worst they've ever seen in their ICRAC career. He wanted to kidnap children. During chats, he tried to convince undercover personnel who he thought was a teenage girl to help him kidnap children from area parks, breed them to make babies, and he would sell them online. Had a plan to kidnap a teen and get her pregnant and keep her in a cage. This is the thought process that goes through someone's mind like this. Wanted to start an organized sex ring with multiple girls and sell babies. That's how sick some of these individuals are. And I highlight that because he is now in custody. We made a case on him, and he will never, hopefully, be able to do this to anybody or victimize anybody. Parents, we always say this, get involved in your kids' social media platforms. Don't let them sit in their room at 10 o'clock at night, all night, texting, getting on the internet. Get involved. Take their phones away when they go into their bedroom. Give it back to them in the morning. There's apps that you can put on your phone that can track where your kids go. Do it. There's predators out there that are tracking your children. And it's very important that we all do this. Lastly, and you can't take their pictures. There's a lot of undercover investigators in this room that do outstanding work. You've heard it already from other people. You guys are rock stars because you're bringing justice to those people that don't have a voice. God bless y'all. You can see law enforcement is unified on this issue. We're all standing here. You have prosecutors, you have district attorneys from other counties. We are all unified in law enforcement to stamp out this problem wherever it exists. So y'all keep supporting us. We're going to keep supporting the fight of stamping out this problem. Thank you very much.
I'm Brian Middleton. I'm the Fort Bend County District Attorney. I was recently elected, but I can assure you my commitment to eradicating child exploitation began before I was elected as a member of the Fort Bend County Child Advocacy Center Advisory Council. Child exploitation crosses all socioeconomic grounds. We find predators in high economic status down to low-income areas. So in Fort Bend County, I want our community to know that my office is committed to eradicating this problem. We will be relentless in pursuing these predators. I ran on a concept that I hated bullies, and that is true. Child predators are bullies, and I can assure you that my team, we're very fortunate to have some very qualified individuals on our staff, and we're building up our resources to make sure that we remain on the forefront of this battle against child exploitation. So to the citizens in Fort Bend County, I want you to know that Fort Bend County District Attorney's Office is committed to protecting our children. And we will do everything in our power to make sure that we're on the forefront of this battle. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Gary Sperger. I run the high-tech crime division for the Harris County Sheriff's Office. I'm going to be speaking for Ed Gonzalez, who got unavoidably called away this morning. Just so you know, this isn't a new thing. I actually started working these crimes in 2000, so this is not a new function. I actually worked a case and had the opportunity to use this building, so thank you for the building, it was fantastic, to actually work a case of a lady who traveled from North Carolina to Houston to have sex with a 14-year-old boy. So it's not new, it just keeps getting worse as the internet keeps progressing forward. Isn't technology a wonderful thing? I say that in tongue-in-cheek. So good morning and thank you for joining us today. The Harris County Sheriff's Office is proud to be part of the Houston Metro Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. We pride ourselves on being an agency that happily collaborates with others to keep our residents safe, and that's especially true when it comes to our children. I want to thank the staff here at the Children's Assessment Center for your tireless work, protecting the children of Harris County and supporting our collaboration. Because of you, our investigators are better equipped to stop those who would harm our children. During the Operation Broken Heart, our investigators charged one individual with possession with intent to promote child pornography. Tracked down his computer IP address, found he had downloaded videos and photos of child pornography. There were children living in his home who were the same age as those who were depicted in the illegal images. We actually find that to be a regular occurrence. Our investigators also filed charges of online solicitation of a minor against a 39-year-old woman who worked as a teacher and a private tutor. Investigators in our high-tech crime division found evidence that she had engaged in sexual conversations with an individual whom she believed to be 15 years old. Sheriff's Office investigators executed warrants in 3 other investigations in which charges are currently pending. Just so you know, most of these cases that we work, they're not a walk out, find the bad guy, and arrest him right on the spot. Unfortunately, some of it does require extensive computer forensics. That takes a while. If you can conceptually realize that some phones contain over 100,000 pictures, imagine being the poor guy who has to sit and go through 100,000 images on your cell phone. That takes a while. There are just a few examples of the great work being done by all agencies here today to protect our children from our predators. To those who seek to harm and exploit our children, be warned, we're looking for you. We are dedicated to stopping you and sending you to prison where you rightfully belong. Thank you for your time.
In closing, we'd like to remind everyone that training and education are key. Here at the Children's Assessment Center, we encourage everyone in the community to sign up for one of our trainings, especially during the summer before school begins. You can go to our internet site at www.cachouston.org to see what trainings are available, and you can also stop by our desk over here where we have them printed out. The CAC, along with our partners, are poised and ready to provide schools, youth-serving organizations, and the community at large with evidence-based practices on how to keep your children safe. But as many of our therapists can tell you, these trainings are informative, but nothing can replace a good conversation between parent and child. Thank you so much for being here today, and at this moment, I'm going to open the floor for questions.
I have a question. How important is it for you guys when children themselves come forward in these type of cases? Because you guys mentioned they're ashamed. How important is that for them to be the ones that come forward to alert you that something happened?
It's crucial, and timing plays a part in that, so we need it to happen as soon as possible. And not even only children, but parents. So a lot of times what we get is parents freak out when they find out what's going on, and the first thing they do is delete everything off the phone because they don't want to accept what's going on. So we don't only ask the children to come forward, but also when the parents find out, don't put it away, don't hide it, come report it, because that guy or that perpetrator is not just targeting your one child, he's probably has a net of children that he's targeting, and hopefully, we can stop him before he gets his hands on someone. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me what legislative changes are being pushed forward or working or being developed to really support your work, because I know that some of those laws are weak. And sometimes you can work very, very hard at a case and realize there's some loophole or whatever the issue is. So there has to be a part of the law that has to keep up with the work that you're doing. Can anybody answer?
Yeah, I'm going to leave it to one of the DAs if you guys would speak on that. Go ahead.
Sure, in the most recent legislative session, probably, and John Stallings, one of my colleagues from Harris County, can address it as well. One of the bigger things that the state was doing was actually starting to focus on human trafficking. There is a direct nexus oftentimes between internet crimes against children case and a human trafficking case. Obviously, some of those victims are the same type of victims. When it comes to sentencing enhancements, for example, obviously if you can't fix a pedophile, and that's not the language of me, that's the language of a court psychologist, experts, because pedophilia is just one of those types of wiring issues, and that's a Montgomery County word, they're just thrown off. Thrown off is another Montgomery County word. You can't fix a true pedophile, right? We're not talking about people that have impulsivity problems, we're talking about people that are directing their activities and their intentional predators as well. And so we have worked for enhancements as far as punishments concerned. Like I said, I know that John was heavily involved with some additional things across the legislative session. That session is now over with. So Texas has 50 new laws. I don't know how, 50 new criminal laws. I don't know that any of them deal with this particular issue, because you're talking about a whole other political body. I bet you if it was up to Brian Middleton and I, the DA from Fort Bend, we'd be able to do life without prison on all of these. But that's just not the current sentencing range. But in Montgomery County, we wish it so.
So what's the
John.
Come on up.
100%?
In Montgomery County, yes, we've never lost a internet crimes against children case in Montgomery County, nor have we ever pled somebody on an internet crimes against children case to a probation. Period. We just don't allow it. And so, yes, oftentimes some of these offenders, there's a rising body of some of the offenders being on the autism spectrum. With that said, my feeling is if the parents could control it, which is oftentimes what the allegation would be, oh, hey, we'll get them out of the basement, we'll get them out of the attic, and we'll start controlling their access to the computer. My feeling is if they were willing to do it, they would have already done it once before. And so there is a growing body in regards to, at least on the medical field, what type of person seeks out this type of material. But, and I want to make sure that everybody understood, there's a direct connection between sexual ideation and fantasy and becoming a touch offender, right? And so when you're trying to break, now think how lofty the goal is, at least in Montgomery County. We're actually trying to reduce a category of sex offenders. We're trying to reduce sexual assaults. And we know that incestuous sexual assaults, right, are underreported and therefore they're under-prosecuted, which is why most of the crime that we're able to detect occurs on the computers through the internet. And so for us to try to actually break that connection, if a touch offender or a pedophile, oftentimes his victims are not in the solos, are not in the tens. Oftentimes their victims range in the hundreds, right? And so the more people that they're able to victimize, more likely that that person then becomes a sex offender as well. And so if you can put this person in prison for the rest of their natural born life or for a long period of time, then you can stop the touch offending from occurring. So if I don't have a victim who is a victim of sexual assault, and I think the FBI numbers hover around 40 to 50% of those who engage in pedophilia have been victims of child sexual assault. And I think that everybody who deals with the profession recognizes being a victim of child sexual assault and then later on becoming a predator of child sexual assault. So it's a lofty goal. I'll let John talk about something more highbrow, which is the law in the state of Texas.
Good morning. My name is Jonna Stallings. I'm the Deputy Chief of the Sex Crimes Division at the Harris County District Attorney's Office. And I can tell you regarding crimes against children and specifically child exploitation and child pornography, in 2016, only about 200 cases were filed in Harris County. In 2017, after Kim Ogg took office and after I took over the Child Exploitation Division, about 400 cases were filed. We doubled the number from 2016. 2018, we filed about 415, so we beat 2017. This year, we are on track to file even more than last year. We work closely with the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. Sergeant Menendez Sierra and his group does an amazing amount of work, and our goal is to send sex offenders to prison, whether it's sex trafficking or it's child pornography and those related offenses. There were a variety of legislative laws that were put forth last year regarding sex trafficking. Specifically, the two are interwoven as far as child exploitation and sex trafficking. The same children that are being photographed and put online in child pornography, sex offenders creating these sexual acts by children and putting them online. Those are the same children that become our sex trafficking victims when they're 14, 15, 16 years old, and they run away from home. No one is their advocate, but we are their advocate. These officers are their advocate, and we are their advocate at the district attorney's office. So there is a movement in regarding legislative laws that we can put forward, which is one, having a sex trafficking court in major cities like Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Dallas. We need judges who are willing to go forward on cases immediately. We'll push defense and prosecutors to get their discovery, to go to trial, so these offenders can be sent to prison. This is a major development and a movement being put forward, and hopefully the next legislative session. Another issue is a lot of our laws only apply to children less than 14. They don't apply to or 13, they don't apply to our teenagers. And so that's a major hindrance when we go to prosecute these offenses in court. That is another movement to change the law to allow prosecutors to bring in other offenses, outcries for older children, so we can effectively prosecute these offenders in the courtroom. So there is a movement, and we need to have tougher laws. We can have increased sentences regarding sex trafficking, increasing the punishment for buyers, sending them to jail. That is a major deterrent to buyers for sex on the street, which is related to sex trafficking. They're also the same individuals that these officers are catching online trying to find children. So I suggest that you contact your local district courts. You find out in Harris County, how many cases are they trying each month? What are their dockets look like? Go and sit in on the dockets and see what your local judges are doing. You can call my office. You can find out that our prosecutors are handling about 125 cases, active cases of these sex offenders, and that we want to get these cases tried, and we want to send these individuals to prison. I also just suggest to you that you go for jury duty. We need good, strong jurors who are state-oriented, who want to send these offenders to prison. So you can't complain if you're not active. So find out what's going on in your community, be active as a juror, and also contact your local legislator and find out, what are you doing about these laws? How can we increase sentencing for these offenders, and how you can participate?
Perfect.
I was thinking about something DA Ligon said. There's probably a couple centuries of law enforcement experience up there. Has anyone ever seen a pedophile successfully rehabilitated?
No, medically it's impossible, and so that you separate because you can't rehabilitate.
Can you come?
I just.
Come on up, Red.
So the question that the gentleman asked is, in all of our years of law experience, he looked at years, I look at pounds, but either way, there's a couple of tons of law enforcement as well as several hundred years of law enforcement here. And so the question is, can you successfully rehabilitate a pedophile? You can successfully separate a pedophile, which is oftentimes what courts will do if there is a probation. whether it's through ankle monitoring or whether it's safe zones, for example. You can't be within so many feet of a school, so many feet of a church, those types of deals. So the courts have tried to carve out surgical application of how would you keep a pedophile away. Of course, you know, there's still the internet, and of course the same type of range prohibitions that you would have that may keep you away from a Burger King or a McDonald's don't necessarily keep you off of the internet. And so then it comes to, all right, well, what kind of provider can you have? Well, of course, everybody here that's worked these operations know it doesn't take anything to hijack somebody else's IP address, right? And so this house then will be bouncing his Wi-Fi from this house. And so when you run a search warrant, there gets to be a little bit of difficulty, or you'll have a common computer within a home. And so that's why you have all these difficulties about separating a pedophile. Now, there have been pedophiles that didn't reoffend. I don't know who they are, but I'm sure that they exist somewhere that didn't reoffend. But the question is, can you cure a pedophile? And my understanding is, based upon all the medical testimony, you cannot rehabilitate a pedophile because of their, like I said, because their inability to be rehabilitated. However, the more sophisticated response is, can you prevent a pedophile from acting out on their impulses? And yes, there have been some cases where a pedophile does not reoffend, but you can't fix the wiring, you can't fix the thought process.
I was just going to say that sex offenders who are, they're either can be violent, and we have serial rapists that we prosecute, or they're attracted to children. That is their sexual orientation. You cannot change that. There's behavior modification, and there's prison. And my suggestion to you is that prison is the most effective way of removing them from society. And when I came to Harris County, I said a lot of these individuals need to just be offered life up front. The Houston Police Department task force officer filed a case about 1.5 years ago, and about 3 weeks ago, he was a first offender. He had no felony convictions, not been in trouble before, and he pled to life in prison for molesting his daughter. So that is the most effective way as prosecutors to be able to say, look, you're going to prison for life because you will not change. And that's my experience. I've been doing this for several years, and not just in Harris County. Gone to several trainings, as well as done a lot of reading. Read Anna Salter. Read her book if you want to know about sex offenders. She has treated sex offenders, and she's treated children who have been sexually abused. You cannot fix them. They are manipulative, and they will lie, and they will spin information and data and their background. You can have a sex offender who is a registered sex offender and everybody knows, but they still let him have access to the children because they are highly manipulative and they will lie. So children and families need to be very careful who they allow their children to be with, be exposed to, and you need to be very careful what your children are doing online, because they will pose as other children, they will lie, they will use, they'll change their voices, so the child thinks that they're speaking online with another child. They do not realize it may be a 50-year-old dude on the other end who is sending pictures of a 12-year-old girl.
Sounds like a good investigative report you should do. Dig into that.
Yes, ma'am.
If I could ask a question, it was pointed out that Houston is one of those sex trafficking hubs, correct? Is it also considered a hub for child pornography? In other words, is anything actually created here or just in the number of arrests?
Every city is a hub for sex trafficking. We happen to be highlighting it and prosecuting it vigorously and investigating it vigorously. And every major city and every city that has individuals who want to buy sex, you've got sex trafficking. So sex trafficking goes hand in hand with child pornography. Sex traffickers can be trafficking a 4-year-old girl, which I prosecuted 1.5 years ago, and he's in prison. He was trafficking his own daughter and taking photographs of her and putting it on Craigslist. You have these children that are pictures when they're 4 or 5, so child pornography, or they're 15, and the sex trafficker is taking photographs or videos of the child engaged in sex acts. So they're completely interwoven. You see the same victims become the runaways that you hear about on the news that pimps are targeting and manipulating. So I don't think you can separate it out, and it's everywhere. It's a multi-billion-dollar worldwide business that people need to be educated on and understand.
If you want to just look at it in a number sense, when I started 2 years ago, we get cyber tips, which come from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, from whatever subscriber, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, any of those things, and they send us tips. And when I first started 2 years ago, we were getting about 200 to 225 a month, and now we're up to over 600 a month. So it's not like, as the population grows for any city, the cyber tips are going to grow exponentially. It's just the more people you have, the more chance you have of predators being in your population.
And we have a juvenile detention center that we run, and kids that are going to juvenile detention are also making the cry out that they've been human trafficked as well. So we're seeing a large uptick in those cases as well.
And if I could ask one more question, there were 51 arrests made in this operation over a 3-month period, correct?
2 months.
Multi-county?
2 months.
2 months, okay. Multi-county. Is there any of these people, and I know it's probably an impossible question, but I'm curious, is there any one person, Constable, you were pointing out Mr. Latner, that is worse than the others? I know they're all, each have their own horror stories with them, but is there anyone that jumps out?
That one jumped out to us.
So at HPD, we had 10 arrests, and I mean, to me, whether you're watching child pornography or actually engaging it, to me, it's the same level. You've gone over that cliff, and so as you can imagine, once you've gone off that cliff, there's no limit to what you'll do. So I think they're all very dangerous. It's known that people who watch child pornography, about 60% of them are actually touch offenders, and so they are going to be touching children, and if they haven't touched them yet, that is their ultimate goal. So I don't like to say that one's worse than the other. They're just all gone way past the edge.
They're all bad, Deborah. I
Right.
mean, they really are. But
Have you ever encountered anyone that had a blank slate? And I know those had no priors on their record, but in their psychological profile, they were not molested as a child. It just occurred to them, and they became addicted to it.
Well, it's going to prosecution. We're going to trial soon, so I can't talk too much about it, but he had been sexually molesting his own children for years, and we arrested him on an online solicitation. He came to meet a 14-year-old girl, so it wasn't like that was enough. He was already molesting children. He had access to children. Why are you still looking for more, right? So, and his interview, he just had a blank stare in his face. It was just like no feeling, no emotion, and that was one of the ones that I always remember, but again, because you never know. They're never going to admit, yes, I'm touching children. You have to go find that out. That's why our investigations takes months. Even after the arrest, we're still looking at evidence and trying to find victims, and we'll get phone calls from these pictures. We'll say, hey, I saw the picture from your press conference. My kid was around that person. And then we start that investigation, and it just spirals from there. So it never ends.
Never through.
It basically does.
And Deborah, we make a distinction between possession
Right.
and distribution of CP, right, of child pornography, versus, as what Menendez was talking about, touch offenders.
Yeah.
And so when you become a touch offender, obviously now you're starting to commit
Right, that's
actual sexual assault.
aggravated
The
sexual
punishment ranges are different. Possession of CP, I think, is a 2 to 20. Then when you start to get into the molestation of children, right, then your punishment ranges start to go up, like John is talking about, a continuous sexual assault, punishable by life in prison, those types of deals. So we are making a distinction between those, and the way these operations fold out, make a distinction between transmitting child pornography as opposed to pedophiles that are traveling to have sex with a child. Or, for example, like Constable DeForest, a person who's bringing their 2-year-old to Montgomery County to engage in what they believe to be sexual activity, right? And so we make a distinction. What Menendez is talking about, somebody goes from fantasy and ideation to
Right.
becoming a touch offender, and those stats are the causal connection. which is why the easiest place to attack it is at the possession of the CP level.
In the beginning.
In the beginning, right, before they become touch offenders, because most of them want to become touch offenders, but if you can stop them at the CP level, then you stop somebody from being victimized. Do
So
see
have
what-
you ever met a touch offender who didn't have that in the background?
Who did not, what, did
Who
not
did
have?
not have the child's porn in the background?
Touch offense, yes, I mean, we've had
Yeah,
people that
okay.
have sexually assaulted their
Okay.
children that don't watch child.
And one final question from me, and I'm sorry I'm monopolizing this. So you're on the iPad.
Correct,
So it is your job to look at these images.
correct.
Tell me about the emotional toll that takes on people who have to do that.
So we have a psychiatrist that we pay through grant funds that handles just ICAC officers. Is that enough? I don't know. You really don't know how it affects you until further down the line. We've had investigators who've left who said, you know, I didn't know how bad it was till I left. So the ICAC nationwide is very concerned about what we call shift wellness and how our mental capacity are for our investigators, because obviously it's not normal, and you don't really know how you're going to react to it. You start watching those images and videos, a lot of dark humor in the office, a lot of just coping mechanisms that you do. We do events after work to try to get together and stuff, but it's not easy for sure, and especially if you have kids. We got rules in the office. We don't play videos with volume. Nobody wants to hear a child being sexually assaulted, you know, and try to limit the exposure of those images and videos on your daily basis. You know, take a lot of breaks, things like that. So we've implemented a lot of things. Again, is it enough? I don't know, but we strive to make sure that the mental well-being. That's why every press conference, every news, everything that I ever talk, every speech that I do to parents, I always ask that you think of our investigators, because it's a very difficult job.
Takes a special person to do it.
Absolutely.
They're very handpicked.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we all can't do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I understand there's a tremendous amount of international sex trafficking that, where they buy the children and young women here and move them to the countries. Who gets involved in that? How do you go out there?
So we also partner with Homeland Security and the Federal Bureau of Investigation to help us out with anything international. We've had cases in Mexico and Canada. We just had a recent one in Canada where we needed the assistance of the Canadian law enforcement to pick up a suspect over there. Because I said, you can talk to anybody all over the world on your phone now. So it does reach the entire world.
Well, the reason I'm asking is I've read quite a lot about human trafficking here because it's a major concern for me, for young kids. And some of the most obvious countries that they've found that are doing the sex trafficking, Japan and Saudi Arabia. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, they also get the same cyber tips we do, they just don't do anything with it. It is, I mean, it is what it is.
We also had the Human Rescue Trafficking Alliance, HATRA, which involves all these different agencies up here, the FBI and the HSI, that work very hard in that area, and we do make a lot of arrests in that area.
Okay.
Thank you all for
Thank
being
you.
here this morning and getting the word out so that we can continue to protect our children. Really appreciate all of our officials joining us and sharing their information. Thank you again.